go.
And
So I
I'm
just invite us
okay.
all to settle in, and I'm going to bring up the daily word here. And as we settle in, perhaps somebody would be willing to read that for us as soon as it shows up.
I can
Positivity.
do it. Do you just start? Just start reading?
Yeah, whoever would like to.
Okay. I'm Janet in Boston. Through positivity, I can do all things through the divine presence within me. I've heard it said, most people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. These words show me the importance of positivity and how an upbeat attitude can keep me afloat upon the rough waters of life. Positivity helps me see the world as full of joy and possibility. Difficulties may arise, but my confident faith in the goodness of God gives me the power to cross the stormy seas, to find calm waters and the warmth of sunshine. The light of God surrounds, enfolds, and uplifts me. When I center my thoughts on the divine within, I feel equipped to meet all challenges. God's indwelling grace sees me through the stormy days. Even if squalls of sadness toss me about, by faith I will outlast the gales and reach calm seas again. And the reading is keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Proverbs 4:23.
Thank you, Janet. Through positivity, I can do all things through the divine presence within me. If you're willing to, let's affirm that together. Through positivity,
Positivity, I
I
I
can do
do
all
all
things
things
all
through the
things
through the
divine
divine presence
presence
within
within
me.
me.
I think that might have some relevance to what we've been studying here. I could be, but that's uh, that's a powerful word for today. So thank you. So before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to be gone the next 2 Sundays. I'm going to Costa Rica to visit friends. So we will not have classes the next 2 Sundays, and we'll pick up on the 23rd of March. I've put that in the email I sent out, but I don't expect everybody to read email. So um, just make a note. If you show up next week, you'll be by yourself. But we'll pick it up again on the 23rd of March. So let's jump into let's pick up where we left off last week. And where we picked up last week was on paragraph number 11 under the heading Forgiveness and Healing. Last week we ended by talking about what is the forgiveness of sins, in which the assertion was all sin is the result of belief in dual powers. I'm sorry, that's where we're starting. What is the forgiveness of sin? Under no dual powers. Last week we ended with the since we are offspring of God, why have we appeared to be unlike him? And now we're moving to the no dual powers. What is the forgiveness of sin? Who would like to read this paragraph and the footnote?
I can read it for you, Mark, for us.
Great, thank you.
No dual powers. What is forgiveness of sin? All sin is the result of belief in dual powers, good and evil, and this belief must be eliminated from consciousness. Sin is a falling short of the divine law, and repentance and forgiveness are the only means that man has of getting out of sin and its effect, and coming to harmony with the law. And that's the footnote. There's Jesus Christ heals. The footnote is 1. All sin is the result of belief in dual powers. We must see the life of God in our flesh, any form of denial of God, life, and intelligence, or of the physical organism, Any thought of the flesh other than us as God's pure substance congests and irritates the body. This is double-mindedness, which consists in believing in evil as well as good, in perceiving and thinking about evil or undesirable conditions, or lack, or failure, or calamity of any sort. And this is from the letters of Myrtle Fillmore, Understanding the Body.
Wow. Okay. Any thoughts? Any reactions to what we've read here?
Mm.
Feet over about 3 or 4 inches. Oh, there. That's good.
What's your understanding of this idea of dual powers, good and evil, and why we must eliminate this belief from consciousness?
I believe that to be very much the going line when I was growing up. Catholic school, Catholic church, and there was more talk about evil and sin than there was about goodness and the power of God and the positive mind place to put yourself. You were always supposed to be thinking about what you had done wrong, what you were going to tell the priest in confession. There was a big concentration on your unworthiness and your, I don't want to say evil. They didn't say children were evil, but they certainly made it feel like there was a dark force at work in the world. And until I found Myrtle Fillmore and was just, it was so shocking to me when I started reading her things and thinking, somebody really believes there's no evil? And I've seen it to be true. When you're positive and you are filled with light and you believe that God's good work is happening and you have to do your part, everything gets so much easier. I just wished I had known it as a child. So I believe in it, but I don't subscribe to it.
You know, it's funny you say, Janet, as a fellow recovering Catholic, that children weren't considered evil, but we could commit mortal sins, and mortal sins were the apogee of evil.
Yeah.
Mm.
Any other thoughts?
Mm. I'm just thinking about how that single-mindedness affects relationships, and being of dual mind just complicates things and makes good harder to express, or less space for it. And I like that. I mean, I like the awareness, that because that's a new awareness on my part.
Can you say a little more about that, Rhonda?
I'll say something personal about it.
Sure.
I have a very dear, precious friend of decades, and we actually started out as co-workers. And she was raised in a Catholic church, and I was raised Methodist, good old vanilla Methodist. But anyway, she so often in our conversation, she really focuses on that negative. And I find that over the years, as she has dedicated more and more of her life to the Catholic religion, it seems to me, but it seems to me as if she's become more angry and suspicious and things like that. And it just, I don't find the lovely sprite-like person that I knew so much years ago. It shows up occasionally, but it just feels as if, despite no significant outward change in her life, she has become more and more that way over time. And who knows, it may not be Catholic Church, but somehow that looking on the darker side fills her more. And it's not as easy for me to get along with her too. Kind of hard to take some of the pricks and jabs, although I do try.
Thanks for that those insights. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And you at large. So good to be back with all of you.
I could add to that. This is Cynthia, because one of the things I felt bad about is I was raised Catholic, and it has definitely had an effect on my children. I wish I'd found Fillmore before and Unity when the children were babies, because I've talked to them a lot about it, and it's really helped. But that guilt that you grow up with is really a difficult thing to get rid of. I was so grateful when I finally could get past that and then talk to the children and, good and evil. And I kept saying, there's just reality. Let's look at that and not concentrate on what's wrong. Let's look at what's really positive. And it changes the whole atmosphere in the room. It's just an incredible concept. I'm so grateful for it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Cynthia.
I think it's time for me to put my 2 cents worth in. Uh, when we talk about good and evil, I quickly think that what they mean here is negative thoughts and so forth. And I recall as growing up and uh, unfortunately, I've never had the blessing of being able to be a Catholic and know what you poor folks have gone through. I've been in Unity since I was 7 years old.
Wow.
You lucky man.
Uh,
Then my mother used to, when I would be a little bit negative, there was the idea that you don't concentrate on negative thoughts, and that the negative, if you concentrate on negative thoughts or put those things out there or share them with other people, you help bring those negative things into your life, and so I think avoiding that is a part of it. But when we talk now about evil, uh, if we look at what's gone on in Gaza, folks, that is evil, and there's no problem in defining what it is. It's fairly easy to see, and I often listen to Dr. Laura, and she talks with people where they've got somebody, and she does talk about people that are really evil. In other words, whatever they do, they're just totally evil. So I don't know as we're really getting into that level of evil as much as we mean using it to avoid negative thoughts and bringing things into our life.
Thanks, Veldon. Yeah, because I think that the issue always is this word here, belief. It's about belief. And I like what your mom said, that basically if I'm using or leaning into negative thoughts, or as Rhonda was talking about her friend, leaning into the darkness and believing that it has power, then I give it power through my belief. It doesn't mean that there isn't darkness. It doesn't mean that there isn't evil. No, it's about what are my beliefs and therefore, what are my relationships to these ideas? And therefore, what am I manifesting through my beliefs?
I think we're also in an epidemic time when all the baby boomers are aging. And if
Hey,
there's anything that will create negativity and fear, it's being on the senior slope and not knowing what's going to happen medically, what's going to happen with all sorts of details of life that were so firmly calm and established during middle age and raising our children. And then all of a sudden, it's like you're pushed out of the Garden of Eden, and it's a whole new world. And unless you have gotten a lot of training and a lot of faith in the power of good and positive thinking and God's will, nothing is evil, you're going to be fine. I spend more time talking people off the ledge that are basically very good, sensible people that I've known for many years, but they've turned a corner. What Rhonda said, that you find someone that formerly was one way, but the aging unknowns, unless your faith is very strongly founded and continues to grow, it's going to be trouble because it is medical world has changed. They're not the resources that they were even 10 years ago. And my friends always say, I just feel like I'm out there hanging. And I say, you are out there hanging. You better start to pray. But I don't say that. um, not having a strong spiritual foundation, I think, is a great sadness. Why I was so happy to find this group last week, to see other people that really do trust and know that all will work out. Um, Not many people share that outside of Unity associated folks.
Thanks, Janet.
This is Claudia. I was listening to this podcaster that I listened to, Mel Robbins, and she had a neurologist on, and the title of his talk was Manifestation Without the Woo-Woo. And so what she did was he explained how the brain works neurologically to draw to it what we know here in Unity in terms of creating your own world or your own reality. But he did it without any words of God. He did it without any talk of anything spiritual at all. It was merely just the practice or the steps to manifesting. And it basically is what we know. It was speak what it is that you want with conviction. Write it down. Speak it again. Focus on it mentally. Nothing, nowhere in this talk, this 10-minute talk, did he talk about God. And I thought it was fascinating that, because I'm fascinated with the brain. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm like, all about this neurological thing that goes on between the brain, or is it the mind? And, so it was so impressive that I sent it to to my children who aren't always practicing Unity, even though they were raised in it. So, but it speaks to what we're talking about here is the duality. Is like, don't focus on that. Your neurology, we are hardwired to manifest whatever it is that we focus on, whether we perseverate, whether we ruminate, or whether we worry, or whether we call in terms of manifestation of, that we want in our lives. So that's my talk. If you want to look up that podcast, her name is Mel Robbins, and I don't know, she was on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube, but it's called Manifesting Without the Woo-Woo.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you.
I don't know what Unity minister it was that said, the one thing we cannot do is not manifest, to put it as a double negative. In other words, no matter what's going on in our brains and our minds, we're manifesting those thoughts. And that's an automatic, and I believe that this gentleman that you were quoting might affirm that or agree with that. So automatically we're creating with our thoughts the reality that we're living in. And we can't not do that. And what Unity is about essentially is bringing us into the awareness of this fact and drawing our attention to the truth that we can refocus based on what we desire our lives to be. And I like that you used that word, Claudia, because it is about what we want, even though for the most part, most of us aren't aware of what we want because so much of our reality is in our subconscious.
Mhm.
And studies show that somewhere between only 1 and 5% of our minds are conscious. And so that means that up to 99% of everything going on inside ourselves is outside of our direct awareness. And so there could be a lot of wanting going on in that subconscious realm that's manifesting stuff that our conscious mind goes, what is that? Why is that happening? I don't want that. Well, somewhere in my subconscious, I must want it because I'm manifesting it.
I have an example to share that I think is pertinent to what we're talking about.
Cool.
Years ago, I worked in skilled nursing, and there was a lot of sadness there, a lot of poor health. But there was one woman who was over 100 years old. She was very frail, but she was just such a light. Her light just showed all around her. No matter who came into that facility, they always seemed to, at some time or another, most people found their way by her room, and they'd stop in and talk to her. She was like a happiness magnet. She drew people to her, and she did watercolors, and she would always be painting her watercolors, and then she'd have them hung up to dry in her room. So there was a good conversation starter right there. But I don't know what her religious background was. Maybe she had been a Catholic. Maybe she had been I think she would have been a perfect Unity person. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that within any organization, whether it has a lot of negativity or not, whether it's the Catholic Church, whether it's a nursing home, whether it's a political situation that's not good, there are individuals who seem to just rise above that and manifest the joy.
Mhm.
Thank you, Susan.
Ooh,
Again here.
Go on.
I guess you can't hear me. Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. I know somebody, and I think all of us know somebody that is just that ray of sunshine, always cheerful, always bright, and just lightens up the room when she comes into it. She's on this talk with us this morning, and it's Claudia.
oh, what a beautiful compliment.
Belden, sometimes you cut in and out. I don't know. You start out strong and then I don't know if you moved back away from the microphone, but we didn't hear it. I didn't anyway.
I just heard the word Claudia.
Oh, no way.
Uh-huh. Yes, it was.
No, oh, golly. Now I really do want to hear it.
I want to hear it again.
All right. Okay, I can see that. I think you can hear me now. I was saying that there is somebody that part of our group here that is just a ray of sunshine. Whenever she walks into the room, and this was when she was at the center when we were having Sunday services and so forth, she's just always a ray of sunshine and cheerfulness and just brings brightness to the room every time she opens her mouth, she does that. And we really, we love you, Claudia.
Oh, Belden, yeah, that is the nicest thing. As Dorothy would say, my soul needed that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And thank you for mentioning Dorothy, another bright light.
I'm welling up with joyful tears.
The
And
best kind.
can you imagine having her as a sister?
Oh,
Lucky I am.
Wow.
Yeah, but what older sister trained her that way?
that is incredibly true. That is incredibly true. Yeah.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, she is my mentor.
Just multiplies.
All right, let's move on to the next paragraph under the heading Forgiveness and Healing. Who would like to read?
I'll read.
Okay, thank you.
What is the relation of forgiveness and to healing? The process by which sin and error are erased from the mind is the forgiveness or remission of sins. The healing work of Jesus, forgiveness was prominent. In the healing work of Jesus, forgiveness was prominent. We can readily understand why forgiveness plays so important a part in the life of the overcomer when we know the relation of sin to disease, of righteousness to health, when we remember that the appearance of the body is the outpicturing of the beliefs held in the mind. In other words, the appearance of the body is the result of the individual's thoughts. Thus, we see that forgiveness is related to healing as cause is related to effect. And number 1 footnote, the forgiveness or remission of sins. To experience the healing that we desire, we must release all thought of unforgiveness. From Ed Rabel, Metaphysics, Developing a Healthy Consciousness. And the second footnote, in the healing work of Jesus, forgiveness was prominent. Quote, "Go thy way, from henceforth sin no more," close quote. John 8:11.
Thanks, Rhonda. Thoughts?
I needed that.
What comes up for me is Louise Hay and how she always correlated, parts of your body that were, less than good, with your thoughts. So, if you had neck pain, who's your pain in your neck? Who are you, if your shoulder hurts, what are you carrying around with you that you're not putting down and letting down? She really was big on correlating that. It's sometimes difficult because, does somebody with rheumatoid arthritis really hold on to toxic thoughts? It kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week and how hard it is to take responsibility for your health, in that if you're sick, then you're not thinking straight. But anyway, that's what came to mind in terms of what do I need to be doing? What do I need to be forgiving to get rid of this shoulder ache that I have right now? So thank you, Rhonda, for that reminder.
I think that the hardest forgiveness is forgiveness of yourself. When you feel, or when I feel that I could have been better, I could have been more kind, I could have not said just that in that tone of voice. And when you don't forgive yourself and give yourself some grace, you start feeling really down and bad, and you feel ugly. So I think the hardest and the first thing is to forgive yourself.
So true, and easy to say and hard to do.
When I need to do that, I try to say something like, "It's hard being human." And just really trying to rise above the circumstances.
How many of us have ever read The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck?
I did.
Anybody
Long time
remember
ago.
the first sentence of the book?
Life is hard.
Difficult.
Life
Yeah.
is difficult, right?
And now that you know that, it's easier.
Right.
Second sentence.
Oh, wow.
I also think there's been a lot more talk in recent years, a long time, about Carl Jung's theory of the unconscious carries so much power. And healing can be done consciously. I think differently. I know things differently. And I still get triggered by some blindsided, unexpected something that then changes my reaction to a situation that I had previously thinking I was really doing a good job of being positive and helpful, and then something just comes, and I know that something, it's not evil, but it is a repository of things that have built up over my entire life. I would say less so probably in the past 30 years because I'm so aware of it and I try to keep things conscious. But we carry a lot of old baggage and it tricks us into thinking something that's happening in the minute is happening in the minute to me, and it's really connected to something altogether different. And it only can be handled, I think, by meditation and prayer and asking to have that repository dusted off and decreased over time. And we're not evil people. We're trying to do good and be useful, and but we're carrying something with us all the time in our brain that's hidden, and it's powerful.
Well, and remember, Fillmore also talked about race consciousness. He
Yeah.
talked about it being, just in the ethers of,
Mhm.
that it might not even be within our subconscious, although I too am a Jungian, um, but that it could be an external force that we're picking up. And of course, we know that because we know that everything is energy, and we can, if we're not aware, we're not conscious, we can absorb other people's energy or energy from wherever, the media, wherever. So yeah, it is a vigilant thing. And then moving ourselves back, as that first part read, to there is no duality, there is only the one.
Mhm.
And coming back to that affirmation of God, the good, omnipotent.
Hmm.
Hi, I just wanted to say hello and show my face. It's been a great discussion. Thank you all so much. For forgiveness, for me, I had to get out a piece of paper and write down all my resentments and look at my resentments. And some of them were really old. Um, like I was mad at somebody when I was young because she stole my Barbie doll dress from me. And like those little things, I think it just carried on. Had another one where I was actually had a resentment against this person. I was so afraid of talking to her that like when I saw her at the market, I would like go the other way. Um, so I was able to like write all that stuff down, and this is the one place where I did use writing. I'm not a big writer or journaler, but when it came to looking at all the people or even the Catholic Church was on my resentment list, the nuns, and like because they were part of my story. They were part of that tape that kept playing in my head of like an excuse of my behavior. And so anyway, I wanted to put a plug in for journaling when it comes to working on forgiveness.
Mhm.
Thanks, Mary.
Mhm.
In another part of my life, I work a lot with addiction recovery, and and this is all actually in alignment with what we do here, but it helps me know and helps me remember something Claudia raised for us a few minutes ago, which is that we are dealing with neurology and we are dealing with biology, and
Mhm.
the effects of childhood trauma can linger if they aren't healed for years and years and years, as Janet was just saying. And I recommend a book by a Dutch physician named Bessel van der Kolk called The Body Keeps the Score. And van der Kolk was one of the pioneers in studying the effects of trauma on the brain. And now this is a whole field of study that has opened up. And Dr. van der Kolk was initially, as a young man, looking at helping soldiers coming back from Vietnam dealing with what eventually became called post-traumatic stress disorder. And now we know there's something called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which I call the trauma of 1,000 paper cuts. It's the little things that happened to us as a kid when dad said, "Oh, you don't feel that way," or "Mom, you went to mom and you were hurting, and she said, I don't have time for you right now." And those little ouches that hit us accumulate over time. And we, as little children, have no option but to think there's something wrong with us. That must be our fault. And so this brings us to this forgiveness question. And, Martha was saying that this is a very difficult challenge for all of us. And I just point out, part of the difficulty lies in the fact that it's in our neurology.
Mhm.
And so the good news is the brain is plastic, the brain is changeable, the brain is reprogrammable. But as Myrtle Fillmore taught us, it takes a long time. It takes concentration. We have to be willing to work at it in a disciplined, regular, continuous way until that change is effected. I remember once Phil gave a talk and somebody asked him, he said, somebody asked me why it is I haven't cured my nearsightedness and I need to wear glasses because I need to wear glasses. And he made the comment, he goes, if I want to cure my nearsightedness, then I have to decide I want to work at that regularly and completely. And he said, I don't want to put the time into that. I have other things I want to do. And I thought that was an interesting insight that he had with us to share with us because it is a challenge. It just takes discipline, and discipline takes compassion. And there's like a circle. So if I'm not oriented to be compassionate to myself, it's difficult to be forgiving until I learn um, how to do that. And we're going to talk about that in the next step, the next paragraph here.
I do want to jump in though, Marty, and
Yeah,
say that
please.
that book is absolutely excellent. It this physician, what was his name again, Marty?
Banter.
Vanderkolk.
Vanderkolk. He, when I read the book, and Marty's point is spot on, but when I read the book, the other thing that I got out of it is he was one of the first people to identify that rape was actually something that harmed a woman's psyche and her neurology and had PTSD, because up until that time, and when it was like, well, that's no big thing, that, I mean, that happens, people have sex all the time, get over it. And so many times from a woman's perspective, sometimes the medical model doesn't include the difference of being female. And so I really, really felt that book was an excellent read for all the reasons that Marty said, the PTSD, and also how to address it. So now what do you do? Now that we know it's there, now what do you do? So thanks, Marty, for bringing that book up.
What's the name of the book again?
It's called
Lady?
The Body Keeps the Score.
Okay, thank you.
And Vanderkolk, it's Vanderkolk. You can find him on YouTube. He speaks a lot, and even though he's in his 80s, you wouldn't know he's in his 80s. He's a sprightly young guy.
Oh, thank you.
So my question is for Claudia, if she read the book. I put the book down about three-quarters of the way through because I have a brain injury. I don't remember reading anything about woo-woo. It was all science. And I thought, oh, this is not going to help a lot of people because it needs that other invisible step to the spiritual connection for healing and for peace and for all that. Do you remember him ever referencing any woo-woo stuff?
No, he didn't get into spirituality. He more
Yeah,
got into the how the subconscious mind works. Um,
yeah.
and that's okay. Just let the scientist I told you about, manifesting without the woo-woo. I mean, you know, not everybody has all the pieces to the puzzle. He might now, but then he was so focused on how people absorb trauma and what it does and where that trauma resides and how it's not at the conscious level, and then what it does to the body. So
Right.
that was fascinating for me.
Well, actually, the last third of the book, he talks about therapies for healing. And those therapies are based on neurology, so they're not necessarily based on what we would call spirituality. But remember what Myrtle Fillmore says in this part up here in the footnote that we read, um, understanding the body. She says, any form of denial of God, life, or and intelligence, or of the physical organism, any thought of the flesh other than that of God's pure substance, congests and irritates the body. So all we have to do is take that scientific information and translate it into seeing this is God acting for healing. Instead of seeing it as a dualistic science out there, my mind in here, no. This is as useful information for us as the insights of Charles Fillmore and Myrtle Fillmore. All we have to do is, how do we want to be with it? What do we want to believe?
That's helpful to me because when I read that footnote, I thought, boy, that is a really dense sentence. How to unpack that? But what you just said, Marty, really helps me unpack it.
Okay.
And I mean, I understand every single word in that sentence, but when you put them all together, it's really complicated. And and being able to translate that into another almost language helps me understand it because there are different ways of thinking about, of experiencing this forgiveness of yourself and this um, unwinding of the power of your past or the unwinding of somebody else's harm to you. You can understand it in purely neurological kinds of ways. You're going to understand it in uh, therapy kinds of ways. You're going to understand it in metaphysical kinds of ways, and they're all the same. It's just another way of talking about it. It's all God.
Yep. And remember, a lot of these discoveries happened after Charles Fillmore died.
Yes.
All of this stuff about trauma, this is all long after Mr. Fillmore passed away. So imagine what he might have said if he were still alive and were able to learn about this advanced scientific inquiry.
Do we need to know that though? Do we need to know the why? Can we not just sit back and wait for healing to come? I get so down on knowledge, needing more knowledge, needing to know more. And I think I've wasted a lot of time trying to understand the why, as opposed to just saying, oh, this is going to be tricky. You better, add some meditation time or add some spiritual connection time because this is not going to be easy to fix. And it just, I don't know, I get very confused how much we're supposed to investigate, learn, come in with theories to the doctor and say, I read this and I think maybe this is what's wrong. I gave it up. And I don't, nothing about this is making me feel shamed or resentful to myself that I gave it up. I think this has been far easier to just get off and say, I'll be healed to the degree that it's my time to be healed. And I
Well,
don't know.
Janet, I'm going to quote my husband's very wise, very old grandmother. There are many ways up the mountain.
Yeah.
Whatever way I think works, whatever way is that conviction that you believe, it will be so. I mean, maybe I think I mentioned it earlier, the book Cure, they did a placebo surgery on somebody to fix their back. They were healed. Could I have done that with my own metaphysical thinking? Absolutely. But it's your belief system. If that's how you believe, that's the way you're going to get to the top of the mountain. That's
It also has to do with just the way you learn and the way you live. Mine is a more analytical kind of mind, and sometimes it gets in my way. But at the same time, it leads me into ways of understanding that I didn't have before. It's just in my house, there are many mansions. In my father's house, there are many mansions. If it weren't so, I wouldn't have told you. There are a lot of ways up the mountains. So you pick your path, the one that works best for you. And sometimes I switch paths.
Yeah.
And that's interesting when that happens. I think, whoa, hmm. That is another way of looking at that, dealing with that, practicing that. Makes life interesting.
I think it's pertinent that we started today with the quotation, which I actually, it wasn't identified. I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said it. There were, most people are as happy as they make up their minds to be. Didn't start out saying you have to go to school, you have to learn, and you have to know all the facts. We have choices.
Right. So what do you want? Well, let's and so Janet, one of the things that one of the reasons I wanted to start this conversation, and this I think goes to something that Martha said also, is that we are here to help each other see stuff that we may not have seen on our own. And every time I get together with us, I learn something, at least one new thing, if not many more new things. And that's actually what I think is the joy for me of being with everybody here and using the text as a kind of an excuse for a conversation, and to learn from each other. Because I believe that there's hundreds of years of wisdom in this group of 15 people right here. And I selfishly want all the wisdom you have.
Yeah, me too.
So who would like to read the first step here? What is repentance?
I will.
Okay.
What is repentance? 12. The first step to be taken toward healing is repentance, a change of mind. Turning away from the belief in things as they appear and turning within toward God, then making the necessary change in conduct. Penitence and sorrow emphasize the feeling, but repentance is more than this. It signifies new purpose, a determination to change the beliefs that have been the cause of the imperfect results. Quote, I rejoice not because you were grieved, but you were grieved into repenting, for you felt a godly grief. End quote. Footnote, repentance, a change of mind. Sin is simply a mistake in judgment that leads to a mistake in action, that leads to undesirable and often unpleasant consequences. Every individual comes into this life experience with a consciousness that needs to be raised or saved. It is this consciousness that determines our experiences. If we do not like what we are experiencing, we can, with God's help, improve or transform our consciousness and bring forth better conditions and experiences.
Thanks, Stella. Any thoughts or reactions? The first step to be taken toward healing is repentance, which is defined here as a change of mind.
That seems to me to reflect back on this idea that we're born into sin, and that almost explains more what they mean by sin, by realizing that it's a matter of us improving our judgment. So we're born without the judgment to make these changes, but we learn those things as we grow up. And that, so does that make any sense to anybody?
Hmm.
Yes.
What grabs me the most is the thought in the appendage there that says consciousness determines experience. If you don't like what you're experiencing, then you have to transform consciousness in order to have different and better experiences. That's a powerful self-help message.
And doesn't that at least point? I'm sorry.
No, it's just super powerful to me because we're responsible for what we demonstrate.
Yes. And how powerful we must be in order to be held responsible in that way. Wow.
Yeah.
Woo, that gives me goosebumps. Let's see, I've had tears and goosebumps this morning.
So raised or saved, huh? That clearly means that we've got our work about us climbing that mountain.
Yeah.
Well, and it also it points out what you were saying earlier, Claudia. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to me, at least for my appreciation of this evolutionary process, that when we're born, our brains are not fully formed. In fact, the brain still develops after we're born for many years. And so that power of judgment, as Veldon was saying, just is not there yet. So we're born not necessarily into sin in the old Catholic or Christian sense, but we're born into the inability to discern. And that little infant is absorbing that race consciousness of the family and the culture that he or she is born in. And if that culture believes these things, then that's what we're growing up with until our brains develop to sufficient maturity that we can step outside and make our own choices, study our own lives, reflect, become wise enough, and begin to absorb the lessons that Unity and New Thought came up with. And of course, they're not the first ones, but they're the ones that have attracted all of us.
Boy, Marty, that really spoke to me because one of my biggest issues that has an effect on my whole system is fear. And I was born right at the very beginning of the Second World War, and my mom was very fearful because I was the fifth child, and money was scarce. And I know that as I began to grow up, that fear was instilled in me. And that just hit me right now. That's having an incredible effect on my own physical healing right now as a result of a leg trauma that I've been working on for 4 years. So that was really good. I'm grateful for that statement. Thank you.
Sure.
And I'd like to just add a piece to that. I believe it was everything you said, plus the larger society in which your family existed. Because the whole culture was so traumatized.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. How could a nation about to go to war not have a collective fear, including and as you were saying, Cynthia, coming out of the Depression, which had to be 8 years of fear right there from most people.
Yes. Well, and depression, World War I, II, and it just kind of compounded.
I'm
Yeah,
working with a lot of fear right now that's coming up with what's happening with our government, like the uncertainty and the behavior makes me fearful of what's gonna come of it all. And um so like I know we look at those past wars and everything, but I think we're all like getting a lot of trauma right now from what's going on too.
so the question is, how do we be with that?
Yes.
Yes.
First step to be taken toward healing. And of course, we talked about this last week. Healing is physical and it can also be psychological. The body and the mind are really the same organism. So the first step toward healing is repentance, a change of mind, turning away from belief in things as they appear, and turning within toward God. Again, the dualism that we talked about in the previous paragraphs is one of the ways to understand that. It's the belief that appearances have independent reality, as opposed to, no, everything comes from God, and our understanding of appearances is from our ability to manifest the world that we want. And that's our God-given power, because we and God are one. So the question always comes, this is the way I understand the lesson here is right there. Turn away from belief in things as they appear and turn within toward God.
Highlight that for us, please. Because I was sitting here understanding every single word you said, and yet finding that it just could not seem to grab hold of any structure inside of me.
So this is where the power of intention and the power of affirmation can come to our aid. I affirm that God and I are one. I affirm there is nothing but God within me. Whatever works for you. Or I intend to experience nothing but God. And again, applying the discipline. So I say, I intend to experience nothing but God. And there's that little voice in my head that goes, nonsense. That's where the work is. I don't want to fight that little voice. I want to befriend that little voice and bring that voice into the presence of God, because everything is divine, including that little voice.
Here, um, you know, I think in a lot of ways we need not to dismiss the idea of fear. I think
We
fear.
lost you again, Veldon.
Something wrong with their mic.
Well, okay, I'll forget it.
No, lean in a little bit,
Well, I
okay?
am leaning in
There you go.
Thank you.
all over here.
You can hear you now.
Yeah, there we go. I think fear is a good thing in many respects, and you talk about, uh, you're doing something, and suddenly you think, I need to be careful. I think that sometimes the world letting us know that there are things we need to be fearful of, and I think more so of things when we're, especially for women, when they're in a situation and they suddenly feel a sense of fear as they get into the elevator and there's people in there that are maybe a man in there that's not up to no good. And I think that fear guides them to be careful and to avoid what's taking place. And the last thing I think, how many things do we need to be fearful about? Well, it can only be just one or two, or there's a whole bunch of things. And Roosevelt said the biggest thing we have is fear of fear itself. So, and with that, I stop.
Mhm.
Thanks, Veldon.
So where does action come in to this when you um, turn away from negative thoughts, you turn away from and turn toward the light? There are other people who are not. So what is my responsibility here? Just to kind of stay in my own, work of being conscious of and being manifesting the good, when all around me I see other stuff too.
Be of service.
Well,
That's
you
what
know what?
I
That's a
learned
tough one.
over the years is like when I'm like really fearful or if I'm having problems, I turn to maybe how I can help somebody, be of service in some way to get out of myself.
Prayer of St.
It
Francis.
works for me.
I use affirmations and when I'm fearful, and I'm working on one for our nation and our world related to peace. You know, it'd be something like, I trust God to guide those that have the power to peace and understanding and goodwill to all. Something that when I go in that direction of darkness and fear, that I pull myself back up with a global affirmation. That and writing checks is about all I can do. Letters.
Letters,
It
making phone calls.
is what I do. But I can write letters and I can write checks. But in those dark moments, I go to affirmations to pull myself out of the darkness up into that higher consciousness place. I mean, it's all good because it's all God, and I don't get to figure out how this is going to work, but somehow it's going to work for good. And I have to trust that.
Good.
We're going to have to leave it there because we've come to the end of our time together. And it's
Oh,
a good question
but I want to say hi to Maria. Hi, Maria. It's
Hi, I
you.
see you. I was going to jump in and say hi. Claudia is the person that brought me to all of you by a miraculous way. So,
Yeah.
how are you? You look great.
By
I'm
a
so
random
glad.
phone call. By a random phone call.
And she
Yeah.
said her number wasn't even listed. And I said, okay. She said it's divine guidance. And she helped me. And you look great. And thank you. And I'm back here. I talked to Marty. So I'm so grateful. And I'll be back again. So
Good.
good to see you. Nice to meet everybody. You all
See you in
have
a
such
couple
great,
weeks.
you
Bye.
have great insights too. You have great insights that are helping me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maria, and thank you, everybody. And just to remind us, for those of you who may have come in a little bit late, I'm going out of town for the next couple weeks, so we're going to not have classes until the 23rd of March. So mark your calendars, 23rd of March, for renewal of our time together. And the question that Martha raised is maybe a great question to sit with for the next couple weeks. Because each of us is going to have to come up with the answer to the question for ourselves. And so thank
Repeat
you.
the question.
What's that?
Thank you.
Repeat the question.
Martha?
When I'm working at being positive and being in the light and noticing all of the people, or at least actions that I see around me that are not congruent with that, what do I do? What's my responsibility? Not only just myself, but outward.
Beautiful question. So, and what I love about everybody here is, including myself, is that these questions are important to us. These questions are the way that we engage with God. And I believe these questions lead me to experiencing nothing but God. And what was it you said, Claudia, about the many paths up the mountain? I mean, this is the many paths up the mountain for us.
There are many paths up the mountain.
And God is so powerful that it can create all these paths.
Please repeat once more the name of the book by Vander Kolk.
The body keeps the score.
Keeps the score. Thank you.
So let's conclude by sharing our prayer for protection together. The light
light
of
of God
surrounds
surrounds
us.
us.
The
love
love
of God
enfolds us.
us.
The
power
power of
of
God
God
protects us.
The
The
presence
presence of
of
God
God
watches
watches
over us.
over us.
Wherever we are,
Wherever we are,
God
God
is,
is.
and
And
all
all
is well.
All
And
is well.
Claudia, tell Lillian again, happy birthday for us, and
I will.
enjoy those deviled eggs.
Blessings, blessings to all of you. Have a beautiful week.
Back at you.
Bye, everyone. See
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.